Every morning before dawn, Ilara Wind stepped into the mist with a wicker basket and a soft hum that blended with the rhythm of the sea. The world was still asleep, the village veiled in silver fog, but the sound of her boots on wet sand echoed with purpose. She never missed a morning. To some, her routine seemed strange, saving injured seabirds tangled in the nets near her bakery. To her, it was sacred. It was the one thing that made her feel close to life again. Have you ever done something so small, yet felt it was saving you more than anyone else? The waves whispered. The gulls cried above, and the world felt endless. But that morning, as she reached for another trapped bird, something glimmered in the fog, a pair of amber eyes watching her from the rocks. Back inside her bakery, Ilara kneaded dough with the same rhythm she had for 20 years. The scent of yeast and salt filled the air, warm and alive. Outside, the fog thickened against the windowpane, blurring the world. Her hands moved on instinct, but her mind replayed that flash of gold on the blackbird's wing. Was it a trick of the light, or something calling to her? She brushed off the thought, shaping loaves like she shaped her mornings. Steady, quiet, predictable. Yet somewhere deep inside, she felt change, stirring, soft as a tide beneath the calm. Later that day, she stepped outside to hang her apron by the door. The air smelled of rain. On the windowsill rested a single feather, black with a golden streak. Ilara froze. The same bird. A soft laugh escaped her, half disbelief, half awe. She looked around. No one was there. Only the whisper of waves and the flutter of wings in the distance. She tucked the feather behind her ear, smiling to herself. But something inside her whispered, "This is not by chance." That night, Ilara sat by the fire, turning the feather between her fingers. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Shadows danced across the walls like old memories. She thought of Finn, his laughter echoing faintly in her heart. "If you were here," she whispered, "you'd say it's a sign." The flame flickered higher as if in answer. Outside, a soft tapping came from the window. Gentle, persistent, almost like a knock. She stood, heart beating faster, and drew the curtain aside. There it was, the blackbird, perched on the windowsill, rain sliding down its feathers. Its amber eyes met hers through the glass, steady and unafraid. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, as thunder rolled in the distance, the bird tapped the glass once more and spread its wings wide. Ilara whispered, "What are you trying to tell me?" The bird vanished into the night, but the echo of its wings stayed with her long. After the silence returned, morning came heavy with rain. The tide clawed at the shore as if restless. Ilara stood at the window, the same spot where the blackbird had perched hours before. Something inside her urged her to go outside, to return to the sea. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and stepped into the storm. There, waiting on the same rock where she'd first seen it, was the blackbird, wings soaked, feathers gleaming. It didn't flee. Instead, it tilted its head as though greeting her. "You again," she murmured, half smiling. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. Ilara stretched out her hand, expecting the bird to fly away. But instead, it hopped closer, landing softly on her wrist. Its claws barely pressed her skin, yet she felt something electric in that touch. "You're not just a bird, are you?" she whispered. The blackbird blinked slowly, unafraid, rain beating on its golden wing. It gave a short, sharp call, and for a moment she thought she heard words in it, soft and almost human. Her breath caught. A single tear blended with the rain. She didn't understand why, but it felt like recognition. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm. Every dawn, the blackbird returned, tapping at her bakery window until she opened it. It perched nearby as she worked, chirping softly like it was keeping her company. Ilara began to speak to it as if it were an old friend. She told it stories about Finn, about the mornings that used to be filled with laughter and 2 cups of coffee. The bird listened, head tilted, eyes bright, and though it never answered, she swore its songs grew sadder each day, as if it understood loss. One evening, Elara walked to the cliff where she and Finn once sat watching sunsets. The blackbird followed, gliding just ahead of her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the water in red and gold, the bird landed beside her, silent. "You remind me of him," she said softly. The wind carried her words away. The blackbird tilted its head and began to sing, a haunting melody, familiar and tender. Elara froze. It was the same tune Finn used to hum while fixing nets by the fire. Her eyes filled with tears. That night, Elara dreamt of Finn standing by the shore, the blackbird on his shoulder. His eyes were kind, his smile the same as she remembered. He raised a hand, as if to reach her, but the sea rose between them. "Find the letter," he said. "It's waiting." She awoke with a gasp, the sound of wings echoing in her room. The feather she kept by her bedside was gone, and outside her window the blackbird's song carried through the dawn, low, urgent, and full of meaning. The next morning, Elara woke before sunrise. The sea was calm again, sky painted with soft lavender clouds. She opened the window, expecting to hear the blackbird's familiar song. But there was only silence, no tapping on the glass, no flutter of wings. The emptiness felt heavier than the storm ever had. She stepped outside, calling softly, "Little one." Only the wind answered. Her heart sank. The feather that had vanished from her bedside the night before was nowhere to be found. For the first time in years, the morning felt truly empty. Days turned into weeks. The blackbird never came back. The silence grew thick, clinging to her like damp air. Elara tried to distract herself, baking, cleaning, walking the same paths they had shared. But each corner of her life carried traces of that small creature. The empty windowsill, the single feather's absence, the sound of waves that no longer comforted her. "It's silly," she whispered one evening, missing something so small. Yet, tears came anyway, because in losing the bird, she realized she had lost the last piece of connection she still believed in. One morning, as she walked by the cliffs, she found pieces of broken shell near the same rock where the blackbird used to rest. A sudden gust lifted the fragments, scattering them like tiny white stars. She bent down, brushing sand from a smooth pebble when she noticed it, a faint trace of gold shimmer on the stone. It was the same color as the bird's wing. "You're gone," she whispered to the sea, "but you left something behind." The wind howled louder, almost like an answer. That night, rain fell hard against her roof. Elara sat by the fire, staring into the flames. The warmth could not reach the cold in her chest. She picked up an old photograph of Finn. His smile still bright, his eyes still kind. "You'd laugh at me," she said softly, crying over a bird. A faint crack echoed from the window. She turned sharply, heart leaping, but it was just a branch tapping in the wind. Her hand trembled as she whispered, "Maybe I made it all up." The fire popped, sparks flying upward like small, dying stars. At dawn, Elara walked to the sea one last time. Mist blanketed the water, quiet and endless. She whispered a farewell. To the bird, to Finn, to the faith she was losing. She dropped the pebble with the golden shimmer into the tide. The ripples spread wide, glinting in pale light, then faded. She turned back toward her empty home, unaware that high above the cliffs, hidden in the fog, 2 amber eyes were watching her, silent, waiting. The seasons shifted quietly. Summer faded into gray autumn, and the sea grew colder, lonelier. Elara stopped walking to the shore each morning. The nets near her bakery remained untouched, tangled with salt and thyme. Inside, the smell of bread no longer filled the air. She worked less, spoke less, laughed never. But every night before bed, she still glanced at the window, a habit she couldn't break. Each time she found only her reflection staring back. "You were all I had left," she whispered once, and her voice cracked like ice. That night, Elira visited the small graveyard by the cliffs, where Finn's stone faced the sea. She brought him a piece of warm bread and a single candle. "You always said kindness comes back," she murmured, setting them down. The wind brushed through the grass, whispering like an answer she couldn't hear. "Maybe I gave too much," she said softly, tears blurring her view. The candle flame trembled, then steadied. "Maybe it's time to stop waiting." She turned to leave, her shadow stretching across the carved letters of his name. The next morning, Elira found a trail of feathers leading from her doorstep down the path toward the shore. Black, small, and glistening with dew. Her breath caught. She followed them, heart pounding. Each step felt heavier, her mind battling between hope and fear. The trail ended at the rock, the same one where the blackbird once waited. But the bird wasn't there. Only a feather with a golden streak lay on the stone, fluttering in the wings as placed gently by unseen hands. That night, she dreamt again. But this time, Finn was not by the shore. He was standing in her bakery, covered in light. "Elira," he said, his voice calm but distant. "You're closer than you think." She tried to reach him, but her hands passed through air. "Find the letter," he whispered again. "You'll know where." His outline began to fade like fog at sunrise. "Don't lose faith now." She woke, gasping, the scent of sea salt filling her room. Outside, something tapped gently on the window. Elira rose from bed, trembling. The tapping grew louder, steady, rhythmic. She approached the window slowly, afraid it might vanish if she blinked. Pulling back the curtain, her breath caught in her throat. There it was, the blackbird. Soaked from rain, eyes glowing amber in the dark. The golden streak on its wing gleamed brighter than ever. In its beak, something small and pale, a folded piece of paper tied with thread. Elira's hands shook as she whispered, "No, it can't be." Elira's heart thudded in her chest. The world outside blurred beneath the storm, but her eyes stayed fixed on the small paper in the blackbird's beak. She opened the window, and the rain burst in, cold and wild. The blackbird didn't fly away. It hopped onto the windowsill and dropped the letter gently into her trembling hands before taking a single step back. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, woman and bird, sorrow and hope. Then, without a sound, it spread its wings and vanished into the night, leaving Elira with the impossible. Her fingers trembled as she untied the thread. The paper felt fragile, edges worn, ink blurred by moisture. As she unfolded it, a faint, familiar scent rose. Salt and lavender. Her eyes widened. She knew that scent. Finn. Her breath caught as she read the first line. "If this ever reaches you, it means I kept my promise." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She sank to the floor, clutching the letter as if afraid it would disappear. The rain outside softened, turning to a whisper. The letter continued. "The day I went to sea, a blackbird followed our boat. It saved me once, led me through fog when we were lost. I told it about you, about how you saved birds each morning, how your kindness made me believe the world still had light. If you ever see that bird again, know it carries my thanks and my heart." Elira's hands shook. The words seemed to pulse with life. "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "It can't be." But deep inside, something stirred. A truth she had always known. Elira stepped outside, barefoot on the wet earth, clutching the letter to her chest. The storm had passed. The sea breathed calmly beneath a clearing sky. The air smelled of salt and renewal. She lifted her eyes and whispered, "Finn, you knew." The blackbird appeared from the cliffs, gliding silently toward her. It circled once above her head before landing near her feet. The dawn light caught its golden wing, reflecting across her face like a promise reborn. The blackbird sang then, a melody clear and haunting, drifting across the waves. Elara closed her eyes and listened. Each note carried warmth, memory, and love that refused to fade. She realized now the truth. Every morning she had saved the birds, she had been saving herself. And the universe had been listening all along. The bird stopped singing, looked at her one last time, and took off toward the sun. In that moment she whispered, "Thank you, my love." The wind carried her words far beyond the shore. The letter felt alive in Elara's hands, its ink pulsing like a heartbeat. She read it again and again until the words were carved into her soul. "If you ever doubt your kindness, look for the bird. It will lead you to the rest of me." That line haunted her. The rest of me. What did it mean? Days passed, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something remained unfinished. The blackbird returned each morning, silent now, watching her as she baked. It no longer sang. It was waiting. And so was she. One evening, as the sun sank below the sea, the blackbird began to fly in circles above her home, calling sharply, almost urgently. Elara felt a strange pull in her chest. She followed it out into the twilight, down the narrow path toward the cliffs. The sky burned with hues of orange and rose, the wind wild and cold. The bird landed on a familiar rock, the very place Finn used to wait for her after fishing. Elara's breath caught. She knew now. This was where it all began, and where it must end. As Elara reached the cliff's edge, the bird hopped closer, clutching something small in its claws, a rusted locket, weathered by years of sea spray. It dropped it gently at her feet. Her heart froze. She recognized it instantly. Finn's. He used to wear it every day, a gift from her when they first met. Tears spilled freely as she picked it up, brushing sand from its surface. The clasp clicked softly open, revealing a tiny photo of them together, young, laughing, alive. Inside the lid, engraved in his handwriting, were the words, "Love always return." Elara held the locket close, whispering through tears, "You sent it back to me." The wind rose, swirling around her as if answering. The blackbird took flight, circling above her, its golden wing glimmering brighter with each turn. For a brief moment she saw something impossible. A faint outline of Finn in the light, smiling down from the air itself. "Thank you," she whispered, "for finding me again." The bird let out one final cry, clear, powerful, echoing across the cliffs like a vow carried through time. That night, Elara sat by her window again, the locket hanging from her neck. The blackbird perched quietly on the sill, head bowed. "You've done what you came to do," she said softly. "You can rest now." The bird looked up, eyes reflecting candlelight, and gave one gentle call, a sound that felt like goodbye. Then, with a slow beat of wings, it flew off into the moonlit sky. Elara watched until it vanished. For the first time in years, her heart didn't ache. It was full. The next morning, the world felt new. The air was softer, the light warmer. Elara stepped outside as the first rays of dawn brushed across the sea. She expected silence, but instead she heard faint birdsong rising from the cliffs. Not one voice, but many. Dozens of birds circled above, their wings glowing gold where the sunlight touched them. Elara smiled through tears. The blackbird was gone, but its song had multiplied. She understood now. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, always finds its way home again. She returned to her bakery that morning with a heart that felt lighter than air. The smell of rising bread filled the room once more. Villagers passing by stopped at her door, drawn by the warmth and the sound of quiet humming. Her humming. Elara greeted them with smiles, offering loaves wrapped in linen, just as she used to. Kindness, she whispered to herself, never disappears. It just changes shape. Outside, the birds perched on the windowsill, watching, as if blessing her every motion. That evening, she walked once more to Finn's grave, the letter and locket in her hands. The sea was calm, the sky deep violet. You were right, she said softly. Love always returns, sometimes with wings. She placed the locket at the base of his stone and tucked the letter beneath it. I'm not lonely anymore, she whispered. You're still here. As she turned to leave, a single black feather drifted from the sky and landed at her feet. She picked it up and smiled. That night, she dreamt once more. But this time, there was no distance between them. She stood beside Finn on the same shore where they had first met. The air was soft, the light endless. He smiled and said, You never stopped saving things, Ilara. Not even yourself. She reached for his hand, and this time it was warm and real. They stood together, the sea calm before them, the blackbird circling above like a halo. Then Finn whispered, When you wake, live. That's all I ever wanted. Ilara awoke to sunlight spilling across her bed. The sea breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the faint sound of birds. She rose slowly, breathing in the scent of salt and bread. Looking out, she saw children by the shore, freeing a small gull from a net, just as she once had. A tear slid down her cheek, but it wasn't from sorrow. It continues, she whispered. She smiled, heart full, knowing that kindness, like love, never truly dies. It just finds new hands to begin again.